Good afternoon, everybody. I think that we are all tired with this very productive but tiring day, so let's start the last session. It's not the last session yet. Well, let me welcome our panelists. If you allow, I'll introduce them more appropriately and correctly during the session. But let me say only that join us from Italy, Bracco, from Bulgaria, Arkady Sharkov, and from Great Britain, Yikai Wong, who is well, should be on a screen, who is present, but he's talking from Great Britain. So this session will be absolutely devoted to economics of health, but the part of health economics that's close to harm being due to tobacco, but not only to tobacco, to all the things that we do and which we should not do. So excessive drinking, excessive sweeting, salting, and so on and so forth, including, of course, tobacco, because this is the main subject of our conference. I have mentioned it before, and I think that this is one of the theses in the economics, that the politicians that are responsible for the health economics have kind of a conflict of interest, because let's see at the Polish data from the last year before the pandemics. The health expenditures due to the tobacco-related illnesses was around 7 to 8 billion Polish zlotys, local currency, per year. At the same time, the same year, the income from excise and value-added tax on the tobacco and tobacco products was around 23 billion. So if I was a politician to prepare a budget for the coming year, and I have an income of 23 billion on one side, and then, well, possible expense for health of 7 or 8 billion on the other, so my net income would be around 15 billion zlotys. I'll say, okay, let's leave the matter of medicine, the matter of health for a future cadency. Maybe we'll have some more money, so we'll take care of that later. Now we have a crisis, or we're facing a crisis, so we cannot, lose money. We need to feed up the budget for the next year. So the first panelist is Emanuele Bracco, as I already mentioned. Emanuele is an associate professor of economics in Verona. He started there at 2018. Previously, he was a lecturer at the Lancaster University. Well, as far as his research is concerned, this political economy, which is very close to what we're talking about, this conflict of interest in politicians, and particularly in fiscal federalism, immigration, and social capital. So, Dr. Bracco, would you agree with the thesis that I just gave, that looking at the nearest budget is very stressing for a politician? It might pose a conflict of interest to him or her if, on the other side, he or she has spending on health damages.
Thank you for your question, and thank you for those who invited me here. So there is indeed a conflict of interest of two kinds, let's say. On the one hand, there's a conflict of interest between the revenues coming from excise duties and the cost that the negative health outcomes have on the economy as a whole. But there is also a kind of a conflict of interest, or a contrast between the short terms and the long term. In some way, if people were to switch away from smoking and starting to take up other habits which are less harmful than smoking cigarettes, there will be an immediate loss of revenues from the government, but the health, the benefits in terms of health may end up coming into the next decade. So surely there is a big conflict in this, and this is mirrored by the fact that many governments started hiking up taxes on innovative products as they understood that people were switching away from traditional tobacco combustion product into this new innovative product.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And just very briefly, how is this ball being played in Italy right now?
Well, at the moment, well, see, in Italy, we're seeing 2 weeks in a week time. But at the moment, what the government has done is that it has increased, well, it has put on taxation on the innovative tobacco products such as e-cigarettes or heat-not-burn products, and has done that quite after a while in which taxation was at zero for these innovative products. They increased it exactly to protect their revenues. Of course, the outside the theory was that it was for health reasons, but
this is a very, very important point I'd like you to keep in your mind, that they raise it exactly to the revenue point, so that it's neutral to whatever they're planning in the next year. Not a penny more, not a penny less. This is very important. We're gonna come back to this a little bit later. Well, we've been all talking for the 2 days about the risk factors, especially of course smoking and tobacco smoking, but we know that the risk factors that we're facing, the risk factors of non-communicable diseases, are taking a huge toll. It's being established that around 100 million tobacco deaths appeared in the 20th century, and maybe as much as 1 billion will appear in the century right started. Of course, these are estimates, as we've heard that the scientists measure what they can measure, and they simply avoid looking at things they cannot measure, but because this is not measurable, this is only a prediction. But still, when we see at smoking, and the tobacco smoke is the second biggest risk factor right now. And let me only remind you that the NCDs, so non-communicable diseases, every year kill over 40 million people worldwide, and the major killers, number one, as usual, cardiovascular diseases, then cancers, then COPD, well, among those respiratory diseases, and diabetes. So avoiding risk factors, reducing harm in every of this, meaning smoking, obesity, alcohol overuse, sugar overuse. So harm reduction in every of these can lower the mortality all over the world that we're facing. And the mortality is not only a problem that's being raised, because it's really easily countable in money when you go to industry. So the cancer all over the world costs us almost $800 billion a year. Then, well, heart disease is 700, and so on and so forth. But you see that it's not only that we die earlier, or we are not that productive as we used to be. No, it's also that this is quite a countable financial loss to the industry worldwide. Well, let me share with you two very good, I think, numerical to this problem. The first one is WHO. Even though it's from the 2011, we can still say that annual work loss, well, the days of lost from work of employed male due to their tobacco-related diseases is around 300 in now smokers, and former smokers already less. So you see that quitting the habit, quitting smoking, reduces the absenteeism, so it reduces the loss of the industry, the loss of your employer in that case. Well, when we look at the more global economic analysis, and we have here the high income, middle low income countries, but the big numbers are given for the world. Please have a look at the year lost to disability only attributable to tobacco-related diseases. It's 13 million years lost all over the world. It's 8 billion people. It's estimated 13 million days lost all over the world due to the tobacco-related diseases. When we go further, we see that The adult debt for this reason is 2 million. How is it to the 8 million that have been talking all over during the sessions over the last 2 days? Of course, this is the 2 million working age, because these are only the working age people. So 2 million workers, hand workers, scientists, whatever, all around the world die everywhere. So they stop producing, they stop putting into the common basket. So this is a huge loss for them, for their families, but also for the industry and for the world in whole. When we look at the money, because money talks in that cases, we see that the percent of lost GDP, this is the last column to the right-hand side of this slide, it's almost 2% of GDP, of the total global GDP is being lost due to the smoking-related diseases. When we go into details, we see that indirect costs that account for $1,800,000,000 are much higher than direct costs, those that are spent on treating the diseases. So even if we looked at those decision makers who were to provide means to treat these patients for the tobacco-related disease, and still they have already had a conflict of interest. If they looked at how much indirect costs smoking causes, they wouldn't hesitate to put more money on any technique, on any subject that can lower the harm, just to avoid these indirect costs. Well, but this attitude, maybe it's not very well understood by those who make the decisions, so it's our duty to spread the word and to go amongst others with this message from after this conference. When we look at the industry of the States in 2018, we see that also the direct costs were 240 billion. So the indirect costs were over 370 billion, which shows that in the United States the proportion are almost the same as in the whole world. And the final slide at this part is that when we look at the estimated loss of GDP in all the NCDs, once again, non-communicable chronic diseases, we see that, of course, all the diseases is close to the 100 trillion of dollars lost. It's American trillion, so we're talking European billion, still a huge amount of money. But when we look at the two groups that are mostly associated with the smoking diseases, which mean the chronic respiratory diseases and cardiovascular ones, we see that only these two groups, it's over $15 billion yearly lost. So if we found a way to reduce the harm, and we could calculate it by percent of harm reduction, let's say we can reduce the harm by 10%. I'm sorry, the pointer I have doesn't work with the screen. So if you look at the lower x-axis, you see that the 10 or 20% reduction already brings in cardiovascular diseases, these are the blue dots, and as well as the chronic respiratory diseases, these are the stars, already brings substantial savings, the harm reduction by 10 or 20%. So exactly the harm reduction that we are proposing, in the devices that we now have. So if we reach this level, we can save as much as $4 to $6 billion per year. So isn't it enough to finance any possible research that we need still to show that these guys are working? Ikai, I hope you're online with us. Can you hear me? So can I have my presentation back, please? Okay. Well, excellent. Well, these are the two graphs that you've already seen during the past 2 days, twice or 3 times. So I just showed them to remind that we know very good, the high efficiency, health-wise, of the novel products, both at the cancer potency when you compare with the regular cigarettes. All the new harm reduction products prove to be of lower potency as far as cancer generation is concerned, as well as if we, I'm sorry. Sorry. Well, the others, I don't know why. There's some virus, a millennial virus, for a millennial a little bit too late, but still, there is some virus who ate this part of the slide. Anyway, it says that when we compare the amount of toxic substances that are being delivered together with using of one cigarette or using one piece of any of the devices, of the new technological harm-reducing devices, that the cigarette is at least 100 times more effective in killing us and intoxicates us much more effectively. But still, knowing that, when we look at the statistics, we see that, this is a national health survey from the United States, 2018, showing that although there is a nice drop in the cigarette smokers, down to 14%. The number has been around here several times too. But when we look at the smokeless tobacco consumer or e-cigarettes consumer, we see that these are one-digit numbers. These are 3% each, so 2.5, 3.5. Altogether, it's 6 or 7% of the market. It's only with those harm-reducing devices, although we know, we just showed that the harm reduction has been proven, at least to some extent. When we add up as a fourth category the cigars and cigarillos, we see that it's also not a very important one, it's a 4%. But please pay attention to another thing in this graph. When you are a cigarette smoker, you more tend to be a daily smoker. So 75 up to 80% cigarette smokers are daily smokers, at least in this survey. There are surveys showing differently, but this one shows 75% being daily smokers. And look at the smokeless tobacco. It's only 60% of being daily smokers, or for the e-cigarettes, it's only 45 up to 50% being daily, smokers, users. Which means that not only we have less harmful products, but the users tend to use them less frequently on a long-time basis, because we know the research that after introduction, the users even tend to use it more frequently, but on a long-time basis, it's less harmful by use, and the users tend to use them less frequently, still decreasing the risks. And what the risks are, of course, the major risk is cancer, and how to fight it, because we're talking economics. When you see the blue line is the population of smokers in the United States, and the red line is the amount of neoplasm, of lung cancer deaths, also in the United States. What happened at the fall? So what happened that the number of the smokers decreased so rapidly after early 80s? Simply there were many campaigns, of course, but you may notice 3 times was general federal tax increase, and it was not a small increase, it was doubling the federal tax on the cigarettes, which kept the decreasing trend, showing that, tax as a tool in creating health politics is quite a good one. The only problem is that you need to take time between the drop in the number of smokers and the drop in the sicknesses, illnesses, or processes like neoplasm created by the tobacco smoke. It takes 20, 25, up to 30 years to see the full results. So you really need to have time for that. And what do you need in the meantime? Oh, in the meantime, you have one thing, harm reduction, while waiting for the total smoke-free Earth, smoke-free America, or smoke-free whatever. Well, the third expert that agreed to join us for well, I'd say this afternoon, but I would say for tonight closely, is Arkady Sharkov. He's, I would say, the new generation macroeconomist during his PhD right now, but he hates talking about that. With experience in public and private sectors, he got his master at Maastricht University, and now he's working. He's coming to us from Sofia. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. So, Arkady, price sensitivity of the tobacco retail market, does it really matter? Is the market in your home country price sensitive?
Well, typically it is price sensitive. Of course, people react to prices, especially when now that with the inflation prices are rising anyhow. So it is price sensitive, although it depends on the goods you're speaking about. If you're speaking about alcohol, it is very price sensitive. If you're speaking about tobacco, it is less price sensitive in terms of choosing to buy or to smoke less or to buy less tobacco products. Depends on the elasticity of the product at the end. So I wanted to go back from to one of your first questions towards Emmanuel, because in our research in actually calculating what was the cost in 2019 in Bulgaria, direct cost for smoking was 4.4 billion leva, which is the national currency, which represented 3.7% of the GDP. So going back to the market and going back to the taxes and the added additional, not only ad valorem, but also excise tax, depends on the good. And since tobacco is very addictive, people will continue to smoke if you're speaking about conventional cigarettes. The only difference that they can make typically is either to transit towards, I wouldn't say totally towards a less harmful alternative, but they transfer, for instance, towards rolled tobacco. Actually, this was the last years, which is not the best option. But with the novel products, with less excise tax on them, they have now the opportunity to pass towards on them.
Okay, thank you. Let me summarize what you just said. So the market, the tobacco market is, let's say, medium price sensitive. It's not as sensitive as the alcohol market in Bulgaria. The same case is in Poland. But still, the price is an important issue. So that when the price goes up, so the consumers either go to cheaper products or switch to those products that are being preferably priced. So, well, I would say that the only way to introduce harm reduction is to price it better than the cigarettes, and then the consumers, not only because they are so much willing to, but somehow by the marketplace they are pushed towards the safer devices for themselves. So they have two benefits at one occasion. So they kill two birds with one stone.
Indeed.
Is that well?
It is.
What's it? Thank you. So let's. Let's come back to the presentation. This is the one of the two last parts of it. Economic costs of smoking. As you may see, is I showed you that in the entire world it was 1.8 GDP of the world. Here, depending on the group of countries, this is lower income countries, lower middle income, upper middle, and high income. And you see that those most suffering, well, let's say, are the high income, but well, they have high income. Okay, the 2.2% was fine, but look at the lower middle income countries who lose 1.7% of their GDP, which is very important to those developing countries, and they lose it just because of smoking. So this is one of the reasons we should propose some mechanism, not only for ourselves, for Europe, to introduce the harm reduction, but also for all the countries, especially those that are so much losing on the GDP, and we see it exactly. Well, looking at the excise tax, because it's one of the subjects that we'll be discussing during the panel, have a look at the right-hand side of the slide where I show a cigarette divided into parts, as in Poland the taxes divide the cigarette, and you see that the excise in Poland is, well, unbelievably high. I didn't believe it myself when I seen it. It's over 60% of the net price of a cigarette in the market, in an open market. This is excise tax. No wonder that we have such a high income on excise in value-added taxes from cigarettes in Poland. But when we look at the upper part of the slide, of the bigger graph, we see that the mixed system, so the second from the left, that the second bar from the left, the mixed system of introducing the excise tax, mixed means mixing ad valorem excise and the specific excise tax, is the most efficient because the highest percentage of this is being taxed, and this is the highest tax imposed. It's really the mixture of these two taxes, because you see that in every other combination, the tax takes a lower part, a lower percentage of the entire price. Why I'm saying that's good? Because, well, when we're trying to convince the decision makers that they should lower the taxes for those devices that are less harmful to our patients, so the higher the excise tax, maybe the easier the decision to lower it a little bit. Of course, not for cigarettes, but for the other group of appliances. Well, I marked here Greece, which is to the left of the first red line. I marked here Poland, and I marked here United Kingdom. Well, why didn't I do this for Italy? I'm so sorry. No, well, it should be the fourth line for Italy. I'm sorry, it's simply Bulgaria is not in this statistics. So, well, but what are these graphs showing? They are showing the trends in price rates. These are the, well, let's say brown or yellowish, and these are the trends in, sorry, I need to go. These are the first bar, the blue one, is the real trend in growth of prices in the market. And the brownish or yellowish or whatever bar is a race of all the parts of the cigarette except of the taxation. So we see that the taxation doesn't raise sufficiently, at least in Greece, doesn't follow the real manufacturing costs. So the taxation is getting smaller and smaller. Lower part of the product is the taxation, which is against the theory that I just presented, talking about the. Yeah. And the final thing in this part I wanted to show you, it also has been debated, I think, 2 sessions or 3 sessions ago today, that, well, those consumers should also have right to speak up. And this is the official page of the European Union. As submitted reference on December the 15th, 2020, by the European Tobacco Harm Reduction Advocates, which is the consumer association created by ex-smokers who used safer nicotine products, most of them to quit smoking, and they're saying that people switching from high risk to lower risk devices should be incentivized, not punished. And taking under consideration all the health and economical arguments that I've mentioned today, please remember also at the liberty of choice. Well, let me address to the panel right now. Gentlemen, do you agree that less harm should mean less tax, so the less harmful the device or the less harmful the consumption of something is, the lower taxation should this thing obtain. Well, Arkady, now so you're the first.
I'll go radical here, just for the sake of being young. I'll say less harm, no tax. But since the government has needs and has to fulfill them, yes, of course, less harm. It means that you should tax it less in order for people to be to have a stimuli to go towards to have incentives to go towards that product.
Point taken. Well, Emanuela?
Oh yeah, it's done in many other markets, in the alcohol, in the carbon certificate. So yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. We have a good instance with sweeteners and the less sugar in there, the lower tax. Well, other words, the more sugar, the higher tax. So it works too. When we look at the introduction of heat-not-burn products in Japan, the case also has been discussed several times here today. We see a tremendous drop in smokers saying, well, okay, it worked in this market. Well, fine, really, these are the graphs that we all recognize, that we all know. But when we go to Poland, we see that not necessarily this Japanese model, I'll say, is repeatable in all countries. In Poland, it didn't work that way. Please look at the 4 years starting 2018 and ending 2021. Maybe these are not good years because the pandemic is somewhere in the middle. Well, but we have data as we have. We will not have them better unless we collect in the future new ones. And please note that the cigarette consumption, this is the second column, remains with some fluctuations almost the same for the period that the heat tobacco products are in the market. And the sales of these products, well, is more or less stable, rising very softly and slowly. The question would be, why is that? What happened? Well, Poland is not replicating the experience of Japan. Once again, tobacco sales are rising. I showed you at the graph at the past slide. And Eurobarometer studies, surveys from 2020 showed that only 1% of users in Poland use the heated tobacco products, which is very little percentage. And 21%, as I told you, still smoke the regular, well, let's say classical cigarettes. So nothing much happened, even though these new devices have been introduced to the market. And let's look at the prices, because we are saying that the price is one of the crucial factors of introduction this kind of product. Well, look at HTP packs fell by 15% in price during this year, while the cigarettes fell only 5%. Still, the HTP products did not take over the market. Well, in my opinion, this is a very important thing to say, and this is another thing that I'd like to consult with the panel, that the tax itself is a very important issue and a very important tool in creating consumption. But this is not the only and not the only that can be used. I call it lack of awareness. So if people are not aware of the fact that they have new products that are safer for them, still fulfilling their needs due to smoking, puffing, or whatever. So the lack of awareness, it's not price sensitive. So, okay, you can price the product, but you cannot price the awareness. Gentlemen, Emanuela, please be the first one this time. Fighting a proper taxation is a very important thing to do to help to introduce the harm reduction technique, but we can and we may never forget of education education, full, I'll say, paraphrasing a well-known president. Education is something that we need to act on parallelly to fighting better taxation. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, and I leave you with a couple of things to think over, especially the last one, written in red. Taxation can be used as a fiscal tool in health policy. It's not being used because, well, sometimes we state it creates a conflict of interests, naming that the government from the budget loses more money next year that can produce to cover the budget gap. The harm reduction techniques can and should be taxed preferably after they are proven safe and efficacious. Of course, these are, well, the basics. They must be proven safe, first of all, and efficacious, secondly, to be priced or to be taxed preferably. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have second part of the session. Every one of the panelists will present his thesis and has 8 to 10 minutes to do so. And we'll go this way. The first...
Thank you. First, I would like to thank for the invitation to the organizers of the event. Second, I would like to congratulate all the representatives of Bulgaria here and watching, because today is our national holiday. It's the Independence Day of Bulgaria. So feel congratulated, whoever is here. Thank you very much. And thank you. It is an important holiday. It is independence. And third, of course, I want to address the tools of behavioral THRA incentives, because it all depends on our behavior. Everything depends on it, and our choices are based on it. So, here's a quote from Benjamin Franklin. Our new constitution, this American constitution, is now established. Everything seems to be promised it will be durable, but in this world, nothing is certain except death and taxes. The second part, taxes. The government needs those taxes, of course, to fulfill the needs of its citizens and to have some public panic, if you could put it like that. That's why I put this painting. It's called Village Politicians. Exactly there. This is the government on the left side and your hard-earned money in the hand of the government. So let's put it like that. The government will continue with the taxation principle. The idea is to make the right taxation in order to achieve health innovation. So, inflation, recession, stagflation. I am sure that you're already bored from hearing the word inflation. I am sure some people are also struggling with the price rises. And why am I putting this slide on? Because inflation, recession, stagflation lead to many differences in the behavior of a person. A person decides to do things which are not, how should I say, very healthy for his being. Let's put it like that. What is the correlation between unemployment, poverty, recession, and the so-called sins? Because what are excise taxes? Those are taxes on people's sins. Those are taxes on alcohol, those are taxes on tobacco, those are taxes on fuel as well. So, this is a little literature review that I have done on the topic from different studies. Unemployment triggers relapse of smoking. So, if you stop smoking, you start smoking again. Of course, some findings suggest that tobacco consumption is likely to increase among parents during times of widespread economic hardship. Studies also find that recession leads to an increase of drinking and smoking, particularly for the male group. So the male are more in danger of going back to smoking. Other studies find positive association of area-level unemployment rate with individual smoking, even after controlling for demographic, social, economic status, and alcohol consumption. So also the sins are interconnected with each other. Smoking and drinking alcohol are very interconnected, so we should always watch them into as connected categories, not divided. And here is a figure about unemployment, recession, smoking. You see who is on the left side. You see the percentage of smokers. On the right side, you see the different groups in the society, and you can see that around 45% smoking is correlated with the people that are unemployed. So unemployment can lead. There is a correlation between unemployment and also increased smoking. So those are the words of Dr. Samuel Johnson about the excise tax. Of course, back in the days, the excise tax was used partially to fund some wars, partially to stop people from, how should I say, bad behaviors in terms of consuming different goods that are, how should I say, not healthy for their being. A hateful tax levied upon commodities and adjudged not by the common judges of property, but by the wretches hired by those to whom this excise is paid. So now we have the excise, it's already put in place. Actually, back in the 18th, or no, wrong. During the Great Depression, excise filled the federal budget until the middle. It's 50% of the federal budget was coming from excise taxes. And after that came the income tax. So it is on the, it is already implemented in most of the countries. So how can we make it more, how should I say, more practical towards harm reduction? Innovation through the right taxation. This was the topic of the presentation. So studies show that more of a projected moderate yearly increase in excise duty results in a general cut down of number of cigarettes smoked. So cuts down smoking of cigarettes. Other studies suggest that significant tax wage between combustibles and novel products is needed for substituting. So the difference in tax, in the excise tax between the non-combustible cigarettes and the combustible ones helps people to transit towards the non-combustible alternatives. A meta-analysis showed the increase in the sin taxes leads to reduction in harmful goods consumption. Of course, this is already what we have and what you have from the previous presentations. Excise and taxes does work, but they're not the only condition. And why I'm saying this? I don't know if you're familiar with the Laffer curve. It is a representative of what happens when you increase the tax too much. So, starting at the zero tax rate, the revenue is maximized at the T. You see in the middle, at the T point, and afterwards it starts to decline as the tax rate increases. Why does this happen? First, you can see that there is an optimal taxation. After it, people and companies also have different behavior. They choose either not to play on the market or to choose alternatives which are not legal. So if we speak about tobacco, since Bulgaria is a bordering country, we could have, for the past couple of years, it's not like that, thankfully, but we can have problem with contraband cigarettes. So this is problem. People start to choose contraband. Other people decide just to buy cigarettes from the duty-free shop. The third group of people decide to choose cigarettes from parallel imports, from countries which have the price of cigarettes is lower. So it makes differences in people's behavior. So for consumers, it's switching to informal market. 1 minute. Okay, very well. So for consumers, this is switching to the informal market. For the producers, they can cover also the extra tax into profit by overshifting the increase. What is important about the Laffer curve? There is a different curve for each product category. The curve varies by income group and also economic conditions change. So does the effect of the tax. There is a delay in the effect when you put the tax. You saw it in Dr. Fall's presentation. There is a delay of the effect of people choosing not to smoke or to transit towards another product. Okay, very fast, very fast, very fast, sorry. Okay, and now for something completely different. Very well. Smoking prevalence. Bulgaria, excise and all the taxes in Bulgaria make around 82% of the price of the final products. Yet, you can see there around 38% in Bulgaria, where we have the highest smoking prevalence, one of the highest within the European Union, although the taxes are very high. So taxes are not the only condition. And second, this is from our study from last year, what can we achieve with transitioning from combustible to non-combustible alternatives? Scenario 3 is what we are striving for. In case of 50% change of consumer habits, switching from combustible to non-combustible, then we can save around 107, you can put it, 1,000 disability-adjusted life years, which are potential loss for the economy typically. So thank you for your time. Sorry that my presentation was not thought, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this concise and clear presentation. I'd like to stress two things. I love the theory of syntaxing, and I remind you and the decision makers that there is a T point on the curve, that point after exceeding which the taxes do not play the role we would like them to play. They just create the black market and other pathologies afterwards. So we need to be very careful and find in which country the different T. Emmanuel, would you comment also on the talk, please?
Yeah, no, I find all of this very interesting. I find it very interesting. Actually, I'll comment on a very small point that you had covered very quickly, that on how there's evidence from China that increasing taxation on tobacco actually had an effect on the alcohol drinking habits. And this teaches us how we need to think at markets as not one at a time, but all together to look at the interaction between markets when we think about tax policies.
Thank you very much. The tax harmonization is one of the most difficult things to do with taxes, especially in the market we're talking about. Emanuela, you're a specialist. Please tell us about the harmonization of taxes in this area, in this market. Would you please stand up?
Yes.
Come to the table.
Thank you. Here we go. All right, so thank you so much for having me here. I'll skip through some parts for the sake of time, and also because in these 2 days I think you've heard already a lot of the things I was planning to say. So what I'm trying to convey to you in this short talk, I have to remind myself what time I should be finished, is, well, we just heard about sin taxes as a way through which tax policy is used to curb the consumption of harmful or immoral goods such as drinks, tobacco, more recently sugar, as the ethics swings one way or another with the passage of time. So the basic economic idea behind this is the idea of externality. That is, when we consume something that is harmful in some way and this harm is not encompassed in the price system, then we are generating an externality, and there is too much consumption of that good if the harm is not somehow encompassed within the price. But it's also linked with another concept which is less known, which is a concept of internality. That is the cost that one puts on oneself as a result of the inability to correctly anticipate addiction. I'll start smoking one cigarette, then I'll stop whenever I want, but then in the end I get addicted and I have to keep on consuming this product which is harmful for myself. And that's what goes under the name of internality. So how to tackle these? Well, it's more than 100 years than the economists are saying this. Very simple way. You tax this harmful good, this good that produces an externality or internality, in order to internalize it in the price system. Of course, it's not obvious how much is the tax rate. It's a difficult question of how much to tax a good that is harmful. This how much depends crucially on difficult things to measure, such the elasticities of production and consumption. How much production and consumption change at the change of the price at which this good is sold or produced. So typically, these policies on taxing externalities, taxing harmful products, are supposed to have in mind the health outcomes, so the externalities, not so much the revenues outcome. Of course, all governments are very hungry for revenue, so things swing quickly towards there. We care mostly about revenues. So I will skip this mostly, just to tell you that taxes do work into increasing prices and decreasing consumption of harmful goods. Also, taxation systems are very commonly distinguishing and differentiating among harmful goods, sometimes for good reasons related to the level of harm, sometimes for not so good reason. Classic example is the excise duty on wine, which is 0 in France and quite high in Britain, while the one of beer is the opposite. This is, of course, to do with cultural reasons and not for health reasons, but still, we are very much used to the idea that different goods have different taxes, different goods with different characteristics are taxed in a different way. And this is to do with food items or tobacco, but also to do with things like pollution. According to the different categories of emissions and an engine, combustion, hydrogen, whatever, the electric, whatever the mix, soft hybrid, hard hybrid. The energy tax directive taxes differently this emissions or incentivizes differently the purchase of these vehicles. I won't talk about Hagedorn and Wong because Wong is here, or better, is in Britain, but is here with us in this session. So I'll just say, as I pointed out before in my comment to my other colleagues' presentation, if there is a link between markets, we cannot think of markets separately. If there is substitutability between goods, when we tax one good, we know that this will affect also other goods. What else do we say? Well, we've been hearing a lot here that it's better to vape than to smoke cigarettes, so I will skip on this in terms of health outcomes. We have quite good evidence that there is substitutability between economic substitutability, so consumers do substitute between factory-made cigarettes and innovative tobacco products, to be more generic. We also have very good evidence that there is a lot of dual use. Now, dual use could be a sign that there is substitutability, yes, but up to a point because I end up using them both together, so they're more like complements. This is one possibility, and data is young, so we may need to strengthen our evidence on this. But potentially, this dual use may be the way in which, in a dynamic setting, people switch slowly from one product to the other. So there is good evidence that there is very little initiation on these innovative products, and there is instead quite a lot of switching from old-style tobacco consumption to newer-style nicotine consumption. This is all things that we know. We know that cancer is bad. We know that the WHO and European Commission are very strongly opposed to harmful products that could create cancer or other non-communicable diseases. We know that the EU Tobacco Tax Directive is up for an update. Now, of course, the European Commission has been very busy with other stuff in the past couple of years, and is still busy, but still we expect some update in this directive. At the moment, we have not so simple, but a minimum excise system such that, keeping the second bullet point, we have 115 euro per 1,000 cigarettes minimum tax. Possibly we're going to see a raise in this. We don't know yet. And we know that generally, especially in Western Europe, but not only, cigarettes are taxed way above this minima. So in France, it's almost 3 times as much. While e-tax are not included in this tax directive that is in force now, but they are taxed. E-cigarettes and other products which are not based on combustion are taxed way less across Europe. So what do we want to have? We want to have a tax policies that avoid government failures, not in the sense of going bust, like we always fear as Italians, but in the sense of failing to achieve the objective that you set for yourself. Actually, speaking about this in Greece is maybe the wrong joke to make. So let's move forward. So what happened in France? In France, you heard about it from other people, I'm sure, or how they have an incredibly high taxation on factory-made cigarette. Do they have few people smoking? No, they have a lot of counterfeit. They have a lot of smuggling. So. And also New Zealand, you heard how good they are because they changed their mind yesterday in a keynote. So what did I do together with some colleagues? I tried to see what would happen if we stay as we are, we double the minimum taxation but keep the same tax differential between factory-made cigarettes and non-combustible alternatives, or we just completely harmonize. We double the taxation and harmonize everything to the level of factory-made cigarettes. So we looked at this we looked at it for every country, but I'll show you the EU 27 average, France and Lithuanian. Actually, they all look similar in some way, so I'll just show you the EU 27 for the sake of time. And I mean, before going into the graph of what happens to smoking prevalence, let's see what happens in this graph to the levels of taxation if we if we double the minima but allow the tax differential between all the new products to remain the same, which would be the middle set of bars in each of the three graphs. Well, what happens if we double the minima is that as the minima are already way above the minimum level, this will have a little effect, and if we keep this differential, we have a differential taxation between products which mirror the harm level. Well, if we equalize everything, still, because of where the minima are in cigarette consumption, we'll have a tax differential between all the new products, but this tax differential is bound to be very small. So what's the outcome of this? Is that full equalization, which is the green line, still generates a decrease in smoking prevalence, but a decrease in smoking prevalence which is much smaller than the one we would obtain by keeping this tax differential. I mean, the idea is fairly simple. I'm out of time, so I'm going to the conclusion, is that full equalization implies a large relative increase in taxes on innovative products, and as they are relatively less harmful, that is bad because it pushes people back towards the traditional product, which of course is not the outcome we would like to achieve. So I'm done with time. I know that you're chasing me on this, so thank you for this, and thank you for your attention.